Thanks, Serona, for welcoming everybody in, and we're so glad you're here. My name is Chris. I'm the CEO of the MLC. This is Eloise, who is really going to get in my business today. And I'm here with two of my colleagues on screen, Serona Elton, whom you were just hearing from, our head of educational partnerships, and Lindsay Major, our head of customer experience. Lindsay oversees our fantastic support team. And behind the scenes, we've got Ellen and Lacey and Kayla and Kara, all helping to put things together. So Serona, you are going to let everyone know how things are going to work today. So
yes, that's right. Fantastic. So this is going to be a little different than some of our regular webinars. This one's extra cool. So we're glad you're with us. So first, we're going to cover the most common questions that we typically get. Then we're going to utilize a tool called Thought Exchange to facilitate the Q&A session. And what's really cool about that is it lets us crowdsource all of your questions, and then you get to rate them. And by you rating them, that determines which topics and which questions are the most important to the group. So then as we cover these items, you can start thinking about what questions you'd like to ask during the Q&A session. We'll let you know when it's time to go ahead and submit those questions, and then you'll be asked to rate them. So this is a very interactive session that we're having today. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump into the most common questions, shall we? All right, Chris, back to you.
All right, so really quickly, we always find it's helpful to go over what we do and then what we don't do. What we do, hopefully, is more evident to all of you now. We have established and are maintaining a public database of musical works ownership information. Basically, all of the folks who are entitled to be paid on the songs that we manage. We are administering this new blanket license available to US digital audio services. It covers mechanical rights, not performance rights. And these are rights that relate to your songs, not to sound recordings, for those of you that are also performers. We receive and then match sound recording usage data from the digital services with all of that song data we have in our database. And by making those matches, we're able to determine who to pay those mechanicals to and how much each person should get. We pay publishers, administrators, collective management organizations like us in other countries who collect mechanicals for their members here in the US. And then lastly, self-administered songwriters, composers, and lyricists. Hopefully many, if not all of you, or most of you are self-administered songwriters. Today's webinar is focused on you. If you happen to be a publisher or an administrator, it's fine that you stay, but we're going to focus a lot of our answers around the use cases that are most relevant to our songwriter members. Remember, even if you self-administer only a handful of the songs you've written, you can be a member for those songs. You can have a publisher for some, but be self-administered for others, and then be a member with us. Serona, do you want to cover what we do not do?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason we share this is we want to make sure you know all the revenue streams that may be out there that you need to go and get, because we will not be passing those on to you. So we do not administer performance rights for musical works or collect performance royalties. So we're not replacing your PRO. We do not administer digital performance rights for sound recordings or collect digital performance royalties for artists. So we are not replacing Sound Exchange. We do not administer mechanical rights or collect royalties for the use of musical works on physical products like CDs or vinyl. We do not administer any licenses or collect royalties related to the use of musical works in videos, any kind of videos. And we do not administer licenses or collect royalties for uses of musical works outside of the United States. So those are all some things that you're going to want to consider as you make sure that you're collecting all the revenue might be due to you.
The reason is not because we don't want to be more helpful. The law was very specific about what we can and cannot do. So those are all things that by law we are not currently allowed to administer. But again, as Serona said, those are all revenue streams that you might be entitled to receive, and we want to make sure that you collect all of them. There's more information about the digital royalties landscape on our website, including a really great chart. So please check out our website. You can learn more about those other revenue streams and be sure that you're getting paid by all the folks that should be paying you.
Awesome. So let's tackle those common questions, shall we?
All right. So Serena, you're going to take the first couple.
Yes. So which DSPs is the MLC collecting from? So only certain types of digital services are required to secure mechanical licenses and pay mechanical royalties. So digital services which operate a service in the United States that offers audio only, interactive streaming, or downloads are eligible to obtain the blanket mechanical license established by the Music Modernization Act. DSPs that are operating under that blanket license will be required to pay the mechanical royalties due under that license to the MLC. And actually, you can find a list of these on our website so that you know exactly which ones they are. All right, the second question, when does the MLC collect and pay royalties? So digital music services submit sound recording usage data and accompanying royalties to the MLC on a monthly basis. The MLC then matches the usage data to the musical works data in our MLC database. And once it's matched, we then pay out the mechanical royalties to our members each month. And that happens on a 75-day lag from when the actual activity happened, end of that month plus 75 days. You can find more information about that also on our website, and we'll post the link to that in the chat. All right, Chris, back to you.
Well, I'll just say we've actually paid 2 monthly royalty distributions out thus far. So for those of you who are our members, hopefully you've received 2 months worth of royalties from us, and we're preparing our 3rd monthly distribution scheduled to go out in about 10 days. So 3 is on its way. This 3rd question, I think, Lindsay, we were going to bring you in to answer.
Lindsay. Yeah. So how can I be sure my musical works are accurately represented in the MLC's database? So if you're a member or you're planning to become a member, you can just log into the MLC portal at any time to check, manage, or update your musical works data. If you have more than a handful of musical works that you administer and you have that data about those works in a spreadsheet, you should definitely check out our Data Quality Initiative, or DQI for short. You can send us your spreadsheet and we'll do a data comparison to what is in our system and send you back just the differences for you to look into and correct if necessary. We'll go ahead and post a link to more information about the DQI in the chat. If you're not a member because your works are administered by a publisher or a publishing administrator, you can still access the MLC's database via the public search tool on the MLC's homepage. So make sure you check out the public search to ensure that the data about your musical work is accurate. If it's not, you can reach out directly to your publisher and ask them to correct it.
And that public search is accessible by pressing the big yellow button on the top right side of the homepage that says public search. Even members will find the public search really helpful, because what you'll see in your portal account are the works that you have already registered or been registered to your member account. So if you're looking for a work that's not there in your account, but it is registered, you'll need to look in the public search. So everyone can, I think, find that helpful in some way. Speaking of data, though, the last question we frequently get is, what is the connection between the MLC and Harry Fox or HFA, and how does that affect your data? So Harry Fox is a privately owned company that the MLC engaged as a vendor. Many of you know HFA because they were one of 2 companies in the business that for many years represented the digital services in this area and helped them to pay royalties and handle their licensing. The other company was Music Reports. Both Harry Fox and Music Reports still exist. They're ongoing entities. They provide lots of other services besides what they had been doing in the mechanical space. And of course, because we are now the exclusive administrator of the blanket license, any royalties that previously had been paid to them are likely now coming through us, unless a service maintained a direct license with you as a rights holder. So we did this vendor, set up this vendor arrangement with HFA, and one of the things that they did was they provided to us all of their data. That allowed us to build our database much more quickly, because we weren't starting from scratch and asking everybody to submit their data to us all over again. That said, since the beginning of the year, we've had more than 2 million works registrations submitted to us by our members. So our data is now very different, and it's a larger data set than the data set that we started with when we got that initial set from HFA. And that data, again, is always available to you in the public search, and for members, you can see your works in the portal. If you are still working with HFA, and you should consider them one of those companies you want to keep in touch with because they may be paying you for other royalty streams that we cannot administer, know that as a part of our vendor relationship, they continue to supply us with updated information as they receive it from their clients. So if you send your data to them, we should get it. And because our data is freely available to anyone who wants it, they should be using our data as well for their purposes. But it's always good to check. So I would say check to see if things are populating in both places. And if not, you should reach out to us or them, depending on where the problem lies. And then for companies like Music Reports or your PROs, know that you need to still keep sending your data to them to make sure that they've got the data they need to pay you. The MLC centralized how the mechanicals work for digital audio services, but we did not create, nor did the law authorize us to create a centralized registration hub for all of the different people that could pay you. So it's still important to keep those relationships up. So I think now we're going to go into the thought exchange part of this. Just going to check and see. It looks like in the chat, we've got a couple of posts from our team. And Steve asked if we could explain some of the acronyms, which Serona did. Steve, if we've missed one, just ask us in the chat which acronym you're not sure about. Those are great questions because the music industry seems to really love coming up with acronyms for everything. And to an outsider or someone who doesn't live every day in the acronym world, it can be really off-putting. We don't want to be a part of perpetuating that. So please let us know if you're stumbling on any acronyms, and we'll try to fill in the gaps for you. So the way a thought exchange works is we're going to essentially give you the opportunity now to submit questions. Lacey is going to put up on the screen one of those codes that you can scan with your phone that will connect you to a website that we manage where you can then submit your questions. All of this is anonymous, so we won't know who you are when you submit a question, unlike the chat, where now if you put a question in the chat, we see your name. So this is fully anonymous. You can put as many questions as you like, but we'd recommend you put between 1 and 3, and then look to see the other questions that people have asked, and again, to rate them. So the goal here is that if everybody participating today, and we've got, looks like 60 attendees, if everybody puts 3 questions into the thought exchange, we'll have 180 questions. And then if you all rate 10, we'll have a sense of which of those questions are most relevant to the group. And in that way, we'll be able to answer the questions that are most relevant to the most numbers of people. In the absence of that, when we do it in the chat, we often just get the people who ask the questions first, or the ones who are persistent in asking questions. And while that's great for them, it may not be as interesting to the rest of you. So we have found this effective. We're going to post that now. So don't worry, Peter, we're about to do that. Lacey, I think you're going to come back on screen. Is that right?
Yes, I will actually share my screen. We will, you'll see a page hopefully pop up, and I will actually walk you through the process of how to join and participate and share your voice through this process. So again, it'll just take a few minutes. If you want to go ahead and get out your smartphone, that is most likely the easiest way for y'all to join. So if you go ahead and open your camera and just hover over the screen, over the QR code, a link should pop up and take you to the specific page. If you don't have your phone handy, you can open a browser and go to tejoin.com and enter this code that you see on the screen. Or I will also right now put a link in the chat that you can click on, and it will take you to the exchange. So we'll give you just a few seconds to be able to access the exchange. Please let us know in the chat if you are having difficulties, and we will have someone help you. But again, either you can open your camera and hover over the QR code, click the link in the chat, or go to tejoin.com and click that code on this, or enter the code in the screen.
And so it looks like we've already got 16 people in, which is great, and that number grows. But just know, if you're not up for doing this, or you're not technically savvy, if you can't figure it out, you can still stay for the rest of the webinar and hear the questions and the answers. So there's no obligation here. But again, we have found this is a really great way to make sure that these sessions are as meaningful as possible for as many of you as possible. It's a bit more democratic than simply taking kind of questions as they appear in the chat. And with luck, because we have gotten through the first part of the program really quickly, we should be able to get to many, if not most, maybe even all of the questions. You'll also get to see them as we answer them. So that will be helpful, I think.
Thanks.
And yeah, you can
So,
see real time. Go ahead, Lacey.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like people are in, so we'll go ahead and actually start the timer. So you'll get 5 minutes to do this part. And this part is, of course, adding those questions that you have. To Chris's point, if you you can participate in multiple ways. And one of those is if you don't have any questions that are top of mind at the moment, you don't have to submit a question. You can actually move on to the rating portion and rate questions that others have that you find to be a vital question. So
Because
again,
even if you don't have a question, everyone has an opinion. And
yes,
this platform allows you to express your opinion, even if you don't ask a question. Good. The other thing I'll just say as you're doing it, and we'll say this over and over again, but the support team, our MLC support team, is always available to help. We've got more than 20 full-time employees working on that team. That is a team that Lindsay has helped to build and leads now, and they are fantastic. They're available 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Saturdays, they're available 9 hours. So you can always reach us by phone or by email, and within the portal by chat. And I see Barbara again. We've baffled you with the technology. I'm so sorry. If you have a question that you're burning to ask and you want to put it in the chat, Barbara, we'll make sure that we funnel that in. In fact, maybe Lacey can put that into the thought exchange. That way it gets in there, okay?
absolutely. I will make sure and check the chat.
And I empathize with you, Barbara, in lots of ways, because I'm old enough to remember when making music didn't require a computer degree. And now it seems like everything is done via computer, all the recording. So it's amazing how the business has changed over the years. But what is timeless is talent. And having watched some of your videos online, you have it. So again, we're here to serve you. We'll figure out a way to make sure we answer your questions. Don't worry about the technology piece. You keep making music. All right, so we're about halfway through.
Yeah, as we reach that halfway mark, go ahead and start to gather your final thoughts, final questions. Go ahead and enter those in. I'm sorry, that was my dog snoring.
Dan, thanks for the shout out. Really appreciate that. We work really hard to provide good support. We know that can make a huge difference. And Barbara, again, right? You're a songwriter, you're a performer. That's the thing that you should be focused on. So our job is to try to make the rest as easy as we can. I'm sorry that in this moment it's not there, but the support team does not require a computer degree. They're people answering the phones, ready to talk you through anything. So especially on the technology side, please reach out if ever you have any issues. You're going to hear us say this probably in response to some of the questions we see. That's a great question to ask the support team. So please, please don't hesitate to do that. And Barbara, we will have an office here in Nashville, but we have some folks up in New York, and I'm originally from the New York area, so we'll definitely be back in New York once we can all travel more freely. And I look forward to meeting you and any of our folks up in New York in person once we can get back out there. It's been such a weird year and change to have done all of this and literally not only met most, if not any of our members, but most of us at the MLC have not met each other in person. So we have done all of this without ever having had that human connection. And I know I for one, am really looking forward to getting out in the world and meeting some of you. And of course, if you ever come to Nashville, Music City, we will have our office open in the next couple of months. And we look forward to meeting you here and having you over to the office. We will always welcome meeting with members. So when you get to town, let us know. All right, closing on 30 seconds. Lindsay,
Yes,
anything you want to say about our support team?
I don't think I have anything to add. Definitely reach out to them for literally anything. If they don't know, they can find out for you and connect you with the right people. So reach out. They're very helpful. They're very friendly. They want to help. So we're here to make it easy for you.
All right. Well, this has been a great exchange. We've got
Yes.
lots of opinions.
So I will actually stop sharing my screen, and I will stop the exchange, and I will pass it over to Serona to kind of walk over a few helpful resources, while on the back end, I work to categorize these questions so that we can address them in order of rating shortly. So I'll hand it over to Serona.
All right, awesome, thanks. So I'm going to take you through a quick look at our website, some of those resources, but Lacey's going to interrupt me whenever we have the results ready. So let's get started and see how far we get with this. So our website is themlc.com. And once you come to the homepage, there's a navigation menu up here at the top that you can begin with. And so the first one you may want to check out, aside from knowing all about us, is the How It Works section. And if you'll notice, once I clicked on that, a bunch of other options also popped up. So on this main page, you can scroll down and kind of learn about our overall process, like how we do what we do. But there's some other great information here as well. So Lindsay mentioned the Data Quality Initiative. You would click on that right there to find out more details about it. There's more information about how you can play your part, which is our catchphrase for making sure your musical works information is accurate. Under the DSP resources section, you'll find a list of all those DSPs that are operating under the blanket license. On the blanket royalties page, you'll find out more about the timeline that we follow for royalty distribution. You'll get to see sort of the little chart here. I know I saw some questions being asked about this already. So you can have a look at that to learn more about our royalties process. And you might have heard about something called historical unmatched royalties, which you can check out. We may have money for you going back many, many years. So not yet, but sometime this year, we may have money for you. So please check out that page to learn more about historical unmatched royalties. There's also, I saw another question that flew by the screen on Thought Exchange, was what to do if somebody else has claimed your work. So you would come here under the dispute policy to find out how to dispute the fact that somebody else is claiming ownership of the work that you might own instead. So you find all that under our How It Works section. And then two other sections that'll be of particular interest to you. Under the resources section, there's all kinds of different tools, many aimed at different kinds of parties like self-administered songwriters. You can find out more about our webinars, some videos we've made. And Chris was mentioning that digital music royalties diagram and information about those other revenue streams. You can find that out there as well. And for those of you who prefer to conduct business in Spanish, there's information for you as well. So all that's under our resources page. And then the last area that I may want to point you to for more information is our frequently asked questions. These fall into a couple different categories of information. So those are there for you as well. Don't hesitate to cut me off, Lacey. So as Chris mentioned, we have our public search right up here on the right side of the screen. So you can go ahead, anybody can, you don't need a log on, anything like that. And that's why it's called public, and go ahead and search for works information about, about your works, about other songwriters' works. That is available to everybody. At this point, you're probably members. But if you aren't yet, or know people who still need to become members. If they went to this connect to collect, that's our nifty catchphrase that means connect with us to collect your money. In other words, become a member. You can go ahead and click on that and find out a lot more about how that process works, explaining how you're going to first sign up for access to our portal. And that makes you a user, and then you would be creating the member, which is the party that's entitled to collect those royalties, the rights holder, in other words. So all that information is there. Yeah.
Lacey just let us know she's
Perfect.
done. So I'm interrupting
All
only
right.
because we're going to get to questions. Before we do, I just want to say, if you see an issue with a registration that you want to dispute, know that right now you should call support. The dispute policy will explain how we handle it, but the way you initiate that dispute is by calling the support team. So again, as we said, the answer to almost every question is call support. We're here to help. And if you see that kind of issue, call support and they can help you. I also just saw, and I'm going to pick this up, Martha, how can I find my publisher IPI number? You can check our public search, because it may be that your publisher entity has already got some works registered, in which case, if we have your IPI, you can see it. But if not, you should check with your PRO. Generally, the way that IPIs are assigned for both publishers and writers is through the performing rights organizations. That is not something that today we are allowed to do. So I would encourage you to go to your PRO or to their website, search for your publisher entity there, and see if they are listing your IPI. If not, you can contact them. ASCAP and BMI have a great new combined database called SongView, and I use that a lot when I'm looking for IPI information for folks that are looking for it. So I would encourage you to check that out if your PRO is ASCAP or BMI. And CSAC has its own database. If you use them, as does GMR, I think you can look for that information on their websites.
Awesome.
So I see a couple other questions, but we're going to hold off on the chat questions and see if they come up in the thought exchange. So Lacey, show us what's just happened behind the scenes, largely through the technology, not manually, but automated technology.
Yes. This is all of the automated responses or aggregated responses. Thank you guys for filling out this survey. This just helps us know who's in this group today. So it looks like we have majority, or close to 50% fully self-administered songwriters. We have close to 28% that are partially self-administered, and a mix of publishers, administrators, CMOs. It looks like we have most of the group, 63%, is somewhat familiar with mechanical licensing. We have a good chunk that's very familiar. And then we have about 14%, 5 folks that say it is new to them. So welcome to mechanical licensing. We will also show you just a fun word cloud that Thought Exchange puts together. And it's pretty awesome to see I assume thank you being a top word and a top rated word, but here you can kind of see the breakdown: calculate, register, PROs, royalties. Those were the most commonly used words in today's exchanges. So then I'll actually go down here, and this is where we can see all of the groupings of the questions. So I grouped them into categories of getting paid and payments, about the MLC, so what we do and what we don't do, registration and data, the portal and the technology behind it, some other questions, as well as questions related to DSPs. So we will kind of hover over these top rated themes, and as you can see, the questions are ranked based on their rating. So we will try to tackle as many as we can based on the top questions. So I will turn it over to our answerers, and we'll get going.
So Lacey, could we start with the about the MLC? Just thinking that maybe there's some kind of intro questions we can get out of the way to make sure everyone understands what we do. I'll start here at the top. Do you ever see some way for all the different entities that pay royalties to centralize the information? Great question. I think everyone would like that. I think it is possible over time that you'll see more and more centralization. In many ways, the MLC is the first example of that. in the mechanical space. Sound Exchange is an example of that on the sound recording side, because they're also an exclusive administrator. But of course, a lot of this is still private market. You know, there are multiple PROs, they compete. And there are other rights that are not administered by any entity that was set up by law. So what you see are a number of free market private companies that are competing for that business. What I do hope is that over time, people will recognize that the sharing of data is beneficial to everyone. And so rather than compete on the data that you have behind closed walls, people will share data more freely and compete in other ways. And that might make it easier for you as a rights holder to at least manage your data. Unless anyone else, Serona or Lindsay, have something to add there, maybe I will hand the next question, Serona, to you. Do you want to grab this one?
Sure. So, this question has to do with whether or not the MLC may assist with calculating royalties to covers. So I'm going to try to interpret this the way it was intended. So a cover, right? A cover is the second or later recording of a musical work, right? So the Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney wrote Yesterday. The Beatles made the first recording of it. And then many, many, many other artists made cover versions of that same musical work. And so the way this works is if you are a do-it-yourself artist who, is self-released and you're going to do a cover of Yesterday, or you're a record company and you're going to release a cover of Yesterday into the marketplace, you need a mechanical license to do that. Now, there's different ways that license is obtained depending on how that music's going to be available. So the MLC is involved in calculating and paying royalties for those covers when they appear on US digital audio services. In that case, we do collect those royalties and we pay those royalties out. What we're not involved in is where those covers appear on physical products like CD or vinyl. You have to follow the practices that have been in place all along in order to secure those royalties, and they are calculated more simply. I will say that's the good news there. And with respect to calculating mechanical royalties for downloads, for permanent downloads, right now that's a little bit of a mixed bag. For some download services, what happens is the record company or the self-released artist, they're responsible for obtaining that license and paying those royalties, while some other download services are moving towards having that flow through the MLC, which is permitted by law. So that's an area that's still in a bit of flux, I would say. So we are involved in some royalty calculation and payment related to covers.
One other thing I might add there, Serona, is, covers is a word that gets misunderstood and misinterpreted a lot. If all you were doing was releasing your recording of a performance you made of Yesterday as it was originally written and recorded by the Beatles, you need to pay mechanicals to Lennon and McCartney, but you don't need their permission to make that cover recording because that song has already been out there in the market. But let's say you wanted to do your own version of Yesterday and you wanted to add additional music or maybe change some of the words. At that point, you're really doing something different. You're creating a derivative work, meaning you've changed the song, and you need the permission of the original songwriter to do that. You can't just do that on your own, even if you're willing to pay. This comes up a lot in popular music, in particular in hip hop, where often you will hear songs sampled. And once you sample that song, you're essentially creating a new derivative work, and that requires permission. And the owner of that original can block you. They can block you on the publishing side or on the sound recording side. There have been some pretty famous cases where famous artists did that and they didn't get permission, and the original artist said, nope, you can't do it. So again, covers can be complicated. But if you were just doing a straight cover, meaning you're just making a new recording of that song, you need to have a license and you need to pay mechanicals. And if all you were doing was releasing that cover recording on a streaming service, you actually don't need to do more. The digital service that operates under a blanket license with us, that use is covered. They'll pay us mechanicals, we'll pay the right people. But once you release it on vinyl or CD or in areas that we don't administer, then the process is different. and may require the assistance of a vendor. So hopefully that's a slightly, some additional helpful information. There's a lot we could say there. Let's keep going though, so we don't get too bogged down. Are you aware, are you a part of any efforts to increase payment for streams for songwriters? So this is a really great question. The answer is no, but the reason the answer is no is important. By law, the MLC is not allowed to advocate for changes to the rates on behalf of any party. So even though we serve you as rights holders and we provide a really important function now, which is to manage the administration of this license, we're not allowed to advocate on your behalf for higher rates, nor are we allowed to advocate on behalf of the digital services for lower rates. All we're able to do is essentially advocate for the process. So if we felt that digital services were not giving us data that we needed to pay you properly, we can go to the Copyright Office and we can lobby for new regulations that require those services to do things that help us perform our role. That's the limit by law on what we can do. The good news is there are really great advocacy organizations out there that represent rights holders. On the songwriter side, there are a number of songwriter organizations that advocate for you. One of them is the National Songwriters Association International, or NSAI. We work with them very closely because they hold the board seat, the non-voting board seat on our board that represents all songwriter organizations. We work closely with a number of other songwriter advocacy organizations. So if you're interested in getting the rates higher, please look for some of those groups. There are a number of them out there. They all do great work. They represent you, and they will be a part of those efforts to help you advocate for whatever it is you're advocating for. How much does music earn in mechanical royalties? Sarona, that's a question that doesn't lend itself to an easy answer, but do you want to take a stab at sort of explaining generally how it works or why it's complicated?
Sure, I'll try it. I'll hope my home internet doesn't, close out on me again like it did a minute ago. Sure. So mechanical royalties. So these range from being calculated very simply to being calculated in a very complicated manner, if that's what you're asking. And so, the old school approach we've had for a long time with respect to physical products, permanent downloads, is a particular amount of money and certain number of pennies per unit sold. But with respect to mechanical royalties for streaming activity, the calculation is more complicated. It involves creating a pool of money from the revenue a service generates. They get to deduct certain expenses from that pool of money, and then they apportion out that money to each stream that happened during the time period to end up creating a per unit stream number for all of the content, all of the uses that happened during that time period. And then once that per unit stream is calculated for that month, generally speaking, then if you had 100 streams, you're going to get paid 100 streams times that per stream rate for that period, and that's how you get your royalties. Hopefully, you guys, you could follow that.
If you're interested in on the portal where you find your statements, every month we publish for every DSP that paid us royalties, and broken down for each service configuration. We essentially have a rate summary. It shows all the different data points the services provided to us that we use to come up with that per play rate for that service, for that offering. So you can see all of that in those summary sheets, and you can certainly use that to kind of try to understand better how the formulas produce the end result. Again, I'm going to move on because there's lots more we could say about that. It is certainly complicated, but know that that's one of the things that we do. We check everything the DSPs give us to make sure that they're paying us properly so that the royalties you receive are accurate. And it's important to know we do that, one, because it's our job, but two, because that's really all we're here to do. And we don't take a cut. Remember, we're free to you because the services separately have to pay our operating costs. So everything we do is for your benefit. And our job is to make sure that they pay properly all of those royalties so that when we distribute them to you, you have some assurance that they are proper and correct. The next question, what is the overlap with CD Baby Pro? So CD Baby Pro is an example of a company out in the world that provides, among other things, publishing administration services to self-administered creators or DIY performers. They also provide distribution services. So if you own your sound recordings, they can get your sound recordings up on the digital services. So there's no overlap in what they do and what we do. Their job is to kind of get your stuff up to the services and then help collect money for you. You can be a member of the MLC and receive the royalties that we administer directly. Or if you elect to have CD Baby Pro collect publishing on your behalf, then we can pay them on your behalf. So CD Baby is a member of the MLC, just like a publisher would be, and just like you could be directly. So that answers that question. And then any future plans to share data with the Creative Passport? I don't know that I know what that is. So unless, Sarona, you do, I'm going to put a pin in that and say, we're going to learn more about Creative Passport. And then the next time we get together, we'll hopefully be able to provide an answer to that question. We are going to try to move more quickly now because we did take a little more time on those intro questions, but those were good, I think, questions to make sure folks are comfortable with kind of what we do and what we don't. Will the MLC collect royalties that have accrued in the past or only royalties after the work has been registered? So we receive all the royalties for any song that was used on a digital service as of January 1st of this year. And if you've registered or not, it doesn't matter. We still collect the royalties. So we will have those royalties and we will hold them if you have not yet registered your song, at least for the next several years. That said, in order to pay you, we've got to have that registration. So please get that registration in. Those historical unmatched monies that you heard about, those are the monies that the services transferred to us as a part of a different provision of the law. Those relate to periods before January 1st. So that's the one exception where we've got older royalties that we will ultimately be trying to distribute to as well. But again, the sooner you register, the sooner you can get paid. You don't want to leave that money sitting with us, even though it will accrue interest. That's another benefit that the law provides and that we can provide to you. But we'd much rather have that money paid to you than sitting in our bank account earning interest. We talked a little bit about the rates, so I'm not going to say more about that. How do we verify the number of streams that are being reported? There are lots of different things that we can and are already doing. We analyze all the data that the digital services provide to us literally the day it arrives, and we've got a whole bunch of automated and manual processes for doing that. We also have the ability to essentially submit questions to the DSPs that they have to answer to us on a regular basis, and we've begun doing that. And then finally, we have the ability to audit the DSPs. So those are all examples of how we will be working to verify the data the digital services provide. And then the black box money. I have over $500 due from songs that have not yet had any income from mechanicals, though they've been an HFA system for years. That money right now is sitting with us in, and it is accruing interest. The digital services have to deliver some additional data to us in the next couple of weeks. That data was really important data because it told us who they paid and who they didn't on all those prior works. That's what's going to ensure that we don't inadvertently pay some of that $500 that you may think is sitting there to your co-writers who were getting paid. So now, once we get that data, we have to begin to put all those pieces together and start matching it and trying to pay it out. So all of the work we're doing right now on the blanket royalties is not only helping you get paid on the new uses, but it's sort of foundational work that's going to help us begin processing that historical unmatched money. So the best thing you can do now is check your data. If your work is registered with us, then you stand a much better chance of being paid some of that historical money that's hopefully there. We will also be launching a claiming tool, hopefully in the next couple of months, that you will be able to use to search yourself all of that unmatched activity, whether it be historical or new, so that you can also be looking for money that may be in those pools. So hopefully that will help connect the dots and get you any money that you're due from past uses. I think we can move on to the next category. Those are great questions. I think we answered that first question, so I won't hit that again. And the second question is sort of similar. There is no way today for us to sync with the PROs. They can access all of our data. Anybody can access our data. So we are hopeful that more organizations in the future will start to do that. And certainly that is something that we can explore in the future. But today, there is no way to do that on our end. You, of course, can ask for your data from the PROs you can ask them to send you a download. And if they do that, that can help you to expedite the registration process with us for any works that are missing. This next question is a really good one. Sarana or Lindsay, you might want to take the lead on this one. Can you
Lindsay,
enter?
you want this one?
Sure. So can we enter songs we don't fully administer? So it depends on the publisher share. So if it sounds like from this question that you've got some works that potentially you've co-written on, or you have like co-publishers with. When you're registering works, generally, you should only register the information for the publisher shares that you own. So if you've got a work that you've co-written and you're co-publishing on, I would first search for the work in the database to make sure it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then you can create that registration with your information for, again, just the publisher shares that you control. If the work does exist already, you can then edit that work and add your claim to that work. So depending on what the situation is, really kind of depends on your next step. If you don't have any claim to the work, if you're not the entity that is designated to collect those US digital audio mechanicals, then whoever's administering that work should register the work. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing.
You might ask, well, look, I'm in a band and we co-wrote all of our stuff. Why can't I do it for everybody? And the answer is you might be able to do that if the band sets up a publishing entity to collect all of its mechanicals on behalf of the members. That entity can then become a member of the MLC, and it would be registering 100% of the works. But if you are a writer and you sometimes co-write with the same people, but not all the time, and you essentially maintain separate businesses, right? You're a writer, they're a writer. We don't automatically assume that your view of their rights is correct. We want to hear from each co-writer. And you can see why that's important, right? Because there can be times even where people get along great, where they just misunderstand things, or there's a little confusion. Did we split this work 50-50, or was it a 75-25? And the risk we would run if we took any one writer's view or any one administrator or publisher's view of the world is they might have made a mistake, and that mistake is to the detriment of the other people. So we start with the premise that each rights holder should speak for themselves. And then if as a group you want to set up your own entity, essentially your own publishing entity, you can do that. Many bands do that. It's a really clever way to administer your rights, both on the song side and on the sound recording side. And if you all get along and you want to manage your business that way, then you can register everything through that entity on behalf of all of your members and co-writers. So it's really up to you, and it depends on how you've structured your business. And yes, again, maybe we didn't touch on this, but a lot of you who are songwriters may be used to the way things work on the performance side, where performance royalties are divided into a writer share and a publisher share. And you might have a publisher, they collect your publisher share, but as a writer, you can collect your own. On the mechanical space, it doesn't work that way. We don't divide up the pool. There are simply mechanical royalties. So if you are a self-administered songwriter, another way to think of yourself is you are essentially acting as your own publisher. You are self-published. So you absolutely can be the publisher of your catalog as a songwriter. As long as you have not already done a deal with a publisher or an administrator, you are effectively your own publisher. We can pay you directly under your Social Security number. You don't have to set up an entity, or we can pay you through an entity that you set up. That again becomes a business choice. Some folks would rather be paid through an LLC or a corporation that they've set up. Others are content to be paid directly as an individual through their Social Security number. So we can handle it either way. It just depends on how you want to set up your business. The bottom line is if you're entitled to collect mechanicals because you are self-administered, you're acting as your own publisher, you can become a member of the MLC, you can register your works, and you can collect mechanicals from us. How important it is to add your recording information to the work submissions. It is definitely helpful. If you can help make that match, that will help us pay you on any uses of those sound recordings that feature your song. The one thing I would note is our database today shows some sound recording information, but it does not yet show much of the information we have. We are still working on pulling all of the sound recording data we received now from the DSPs in these first couple of months into the portal. So if you go to the portal and you look and you think, God, I see some sound recording information missing, don't worry yet and think like, oh, I've got to fill all that in. We should be putting more sound recording information in the database in the next month or two, and that will then show you all the sound recording data we've got for you. If you're wondering what it looks like today, go to your statement. Your statement will show you all the sound recordings that we've matched to your songs. So that's probably a great first check before you start submitting a bunch of sound recording data through the portal, fearing that it's not there. If you register your songs in June, will you be paid out for past months? We're still working through the June distribution. The answer is maybe. If not this month, I expect that it will be next month. That kind of dynamic of going back and now applying new data that we received after the distribution to the older data from those distributions that would say unmatched or unclaimed, that's something that we're literally building right now. So if not in June, my expectation is it will be in July, and you should start to see that. As always, if you have questions, you can call support. And do we get any information about songwriters in the PROs? Again, we sourced our original data from HFA, and now we're getting our data from all of you. So if you have data with ASCAP or BMI, don't assume that it's with us. Same would be true for CSAC or GMR, unless it got to HFA separately in the past. And when registering works, should you register individual tracks as works or the album? That's a great, great question. Everything you register with us is based on the work or the individual song. It is not based on the album. So if you wrote 7 or 10 songs that were recorded and released on an album, you want to register all 7 or all 10 of those songs individually. And let's say the album had like a longer version of that song. Maybe there was an alternate version that had an extra chorus, an extra verse. That's something you should register as a separate work, because it's not just a different performance of the same song. It's actually a different song. So again, you register individual songs or individual works. Same concept. Musical works, songs, musical compositions. Those are 3 different ways of saying the same thing. It's your song, and that's what you register. I've registered some songs with a 3-writer split that's up to 99, not 100, but those songs were already accepted. So you can go back and you can amend the registration and make those 33.33 for 2 of them and 33.34 for the other. Generally, the common practice is to extend it out the decimal like that. I'll check. I don't know, Lindsay, if you know. I know if it's pretty close, like let's say everybody registered 34, we'll actually prorate down to 100. I don't know if it's 99 if we prorate up to 100. Do you happen to know that, Lindsay?
I don't happen to know that. That's a good question, though. I can try to find out real quick.
We'll get that answer. And if you call support next week, hopefully we'll have that answer and we can let you know. But you can amend your registrations. And if you're wondering how to handle that 3-writer split, the best practice would be to have 2 writers register 33.33% and then the other to register 33.34. That's generally how folks do it. Where can I find my US copyright registrar? Assuming you might mean registration information, you can go to the US Copyright Office and you can look for that copyright registration. If you're interested, know that of all the data points out there, that's probably the least relevant for our purposes. So I wouldn't worry too much about that if you haven't already gotten us your ISWCs, for example, or your ISRCs. I would focus more attention on those. But if you want to find it, the US Copyright Office maintains a database with a public search. You should be able to find it there. Could you?
Hey, Chris, time check. We've got about 3 minutes left. I don't know if you want to hit the top 1 or 2 in the remaining categories. Just wanted to give you a chance to consider that.
Yeah, let's do that. Your registration could be evidence of your ownership. Yes, that's a good one to follow up support. Yes, we pay distributors like TuneCore who you have elected to have collect your publishing. Again, publishing admin is usually an option. So just because you're a customer of TuneCore or CD Baby doesn't mean you've also selected publishing admin. That's the question you need to know. So if they're only distributing your sound recordings, not collecting your publishing, you can and should sign up with the MLC, or you can elect to have them be your publishing administrator too. No, we do not collect foreign royalties. We're only allowed to collect and administer US royalties. So if your songs are used outside the US, you've got to find an administrator, a publisher, or work with a company like a TuneCore, a CD Baby Pro, or a Song Trust to collect those monies for you outside the US. We probably can stay a little bit longer for those that can, but for those of you that have to join because you have a hard stop, thank you for joining us. This was great. We do these every month, so please come back. And in the meantime, know that we do other webinars and you can always call support with your questions. So just because we didn't get to your question today doesn't mean you're out of luck. There are lots of ways to reach us and we look forward to hearing from you. Is it possible to download search results from the public database? Not yet, but that is something we're working on. It is possible to download the entire public database, but you've got to be a little more sophisticated. That's not something you can just download to your average laptop computer, but we are working on ways to allow members in the first instance and then perhaps others to download search results. We know that's something that'll be helpful. Thanks, Martha. So glad you could join us. Will we have access to the recording of this Q&A? That's a great question. Lacey, do we make the recordings of these webinars available as well?
Yes, we will send an email out with the recording likely early next week, and it will also be posted to our website on the resources page as well as our YouTube page.
Excellent. Good. So yeah, if you want a replay of this, I know we move fast because we try to answer a lot of questions. You can absolutely go back and listen to answers to questions we may have missed. And let's see, two more. Does mechanical license allow covers on albums? So again, once that song has been recorded and released commercially the first time, you have the right to re-record that song, your own version of it, but you still have to pay mechanicals. If the song has never been commercially released before, then the writer of the song has a right under the law to say yes or no. Basically, you as a songwriter get to control who records and releases your song first. So that I think covers that a bit. Steve, I see you reached out. Easiest way to reach me, just connect on LinkedIn, and then we can I'm happy to connect with you that way and answer questions, and we can connect offline. Who are buying mechanical licenses? So again, the digital services secure the blanket license, and then they pay us the royalties that are due under those licenses. And then our job is to find you and to pay you your share of those royalties for the uses of your song. So that's how it works. You don't actually buy the license, you secure the license, and then you pay the royalties. So those are all the questions that I think we had in the thought exchange. Is that right, Lacey?
That is correct.
So so then, just because I saw there were a couple of things that were showing up on the chat, is there a way to
tackle
see who's
most of the
collecting?
questions? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead,
Solomon,
Preston.
there is a way to see who's collecting on our behalf. When you go to the public search and you search for one of your songs, if it's registered in our database, you should see the publishers and the administrators that are collecting the shares of that work. Now, today it's not. We don't yet show which publishers are collecting which shares and what the connection might be to a writer. Sometimes that connection is broken and that someone might just own a share of the work, but that share was sold, by the writer to someone who sold it to someone else. So it isn't the case that every share always connects back to a writer. But the bottom line is you can see who the publishers and administrators are for that work and the shares that they're collecting. And that essentially tells you who's getting paid. So you can then look and see if your publisher or your administrator is listed. And if they are not, then you can deduce that they're not collecting on your behalf. So all of that is publicly available. And that's another great reason why you should go search for your works, because if you're wondering who's collecting for that song, you can find that. And then it says, does that mean they've been collecting your money? It could be. But Solomon, this is a great example of where you might want to reach out to support, because again, we know, right? The industry knows that there have been issues with the data. Genji, there have been issues with data for a long time. So what the MLC has done in the first instance is it's made all of that available. So every time you see something that's wrong, the first thing you should think is like, okay, this is great, I can see it. It was probably wrong 6 months ago, and that's not a good thing, but it means you now have the ability to see that and do something about it. If you contact our support team, we can help give you some suggestions on how you do that. And again, if someone's collecting money for a song that you wrote and they're not entitled to do it, you can file a dispute, and our support team can help you with that too. So all of these things will hopefully help you get control of your songs, your revenue, and make sure that it's corrected. The way that you can tell the administrator collecting for the publishers, they're listed one after the other. So the administrator will be listed right below the publisher. Not every publisher has a separate administrator. Sometimes the publisher is the administrator. So you might see publisher, 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 and then administrator. What that means is the first two publishers are doing their own administration. The third publisher has an administrator, and that administrative entity is listed right below them. So that's pretty easy to see in the portal. Again, it's all there. And if you have questions as you look at particular works, give our support team a call and we'll try to help figure it out. So Solomon, so glad that you feel good about this. Again, we know this is a mess. This is why all of you and your advocacy organizations, the publisher advocacy organizations, even the digital services ultimately went along with this change, because there were lots of things that were not working, and all of this is an attempt to make it better. It's not going to make it better overnight, and that's why we need you to play your part. And what's great is even today, some of you have begun doing that. By checking your data real time while we were on the webinar today, you're playing your part. You're looking to see how your songs are set up. And if you see things that you don't think are right, reach out to us. That's how we can help. We're here to help. Our goal is to be successful for each and every one of you, one person at a time. So on that note, I think we're probably over time, and we've kind of gotten through most of the questions. So I'm going to say thank you for joining us today. This is what we live to do. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Serona, for being here. Know that they work behind the scenes every day to help make this work for you. And we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. If you haven't already checked out the website, check out the website. If you don't already follow us on social media, pick a channel, follow us on social media. We put lots of updates out on social media. And if you are a member, you should be getting our member newsletter. Please make sure to check that out. We keep it short and sweet, but we try to put useful information in that newsletter every month. That's another way to get more information. And let us know how we're doing. If there's something we can do to help, if there's something that isn't working, give us that feedback. That's how we get better. That's our goal, is to always be getting better for you. So on that note, thank you. Have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on another future webinar, someday soon in person at a live event. Take care, everybody.